Hello everyone, my name is Phil Webb. I work for Pivotal, and this is Baruch.
And I'm developer advocate with JFrog.
So this is a talk. This is an extended talk for one that I gave at a conference that Baruch's company actually run, that was based in Napa, and it was without doubt one of the best conferences I've ever been to.
It's not because of us, it's based in Napa.
Yeah, basically, it had the best food of any conference that I've been to.
So you can take any content, place it in Napa, and it will become the best conference ever.
I've never been to a conference that had lobster before, and I'm very glad that it didn't bankrupt the company, and Baruch's here still to help me co-present it again today. So what we're going to do is try and show you some of the behind-the-scenes aspects of the Spring Team's release process and the process that we use to manage the code and the bugs that we get. Has anyone seen this slide before? This is supposed to show you how the MGM logo was made. I assure you it's not real. The lion here is actually getting a CAT scan, so we didn't hurt any lions. There's no need to boycott our dentistry or anything. We're animal lovers in this in this conference. So what we're going to do is show you a little bit about the Spring team. Then we're going to talk about the community. And then finally, we're going to show you some of the tools and the release processes that we use to get the bits out that you actually consume.
And we're actually going to release Spring Boot live during this session, if the internet allows us, basically.
If the Wi-Fi permitting. Two years ago, Chris Beams stood on stage at the keynote and live switched on the website, which I thought was kind of stupid, so I wanted to replicate that in a small way here.
No, but switching, the DNS for servers, that was funny. We were going to do the real thing.
Yeah, so we're going to release 1.2.6 with a bit of luck. So the two projects that I've worked on in Pivotal are the Spring Framework, the core Spring Framework, and Spring Boot. So this talk is really a kind of amalgamation of the processes that we use for both those projects, which are similar but not identical. I'm guessing I don't need to demo this too much, but I'll just quickly show you some of the features of Spring Boot that make it somewhat unique.
Who knows what Spring Boot is? We need to find one that didn't raise their hand, and then we have a case for a demo.
Someone on the video might not have seen
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Okay, so Spring Boot is a little bit unique in that we release both a bunch of plugins for build tools. So we have a Gradle plugin, we have a Maven plugin, we have the library itself, and we also have a Spring command line tool. So this is the command line tool that gets released. This can be downloaded as a zip file, or you can install it through Homebrew. So our Spring Boot release process is a little bit more involved than Spring Frameworks. And if you haven't seen the kind of standard example, we can write a Groovy app. So I normally do a REST controller to show people.
Yeah,
oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Too big? I also hate doing Groovy at a Groovy conference because I always write Groovy as if it's Java. So ignore any semicolons or anything extra that I put in.
Good news about Groovy, that semicolons won't hurt, right?
That's good, yeah. But Groovy people just...
No.
It's not the done thing.
We will let you go. You're a beginner, that's fine.
So this is the kind of tweetable Spring Boot example that I often demonstrate. So if I save this somewhere.
The colors are beautiful in Groovy.
So this command line tool actually runs, downloads the libraries, start the application. This should be, with a bit of luck, a runnable application that I can hit on localhost 8080.
Yeah.
Oh. Or not. Oh, it might help if I return something. No semicolon. All right, so make that a bit bigger as well. So we have a command line tool. We also have this website that I'm sure most of you have seen, start.spring.io, which lets you do the same kind of thing if you want to build a Maven or a Groovy project, a Gradle project. And what not a lot of people know is you can also curl that website, which is kind of nice. So if I curl start.spring.io.
So it should be bigger.
You want that bigger font still?
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't look so great in a big font, but you basically get the service recognizes the header, and you get some kind of instructions to how you can actually use it to kind of create a sample project using curl. So I often use this as a kind of quick way to get started. That creates me a zip file with the project. I can unzip it, copy that location. And then, if I choose the right thing, import it as a Maven project. And, okay, I've picked a name that exists, but you get the idea. It comes in, and then we've got the libraries inside Maven. So we've got, when we release these bits, we've got to release the libraries, that Spring command line tool, and the plugins all at the same time. Okay, so a little bit about the Spring team. The Spring team is, I think, kind of unique, especially within Pivotal, because Pivotal is very much about co-locating people and working on projects together as pairs. And the Spring team's kind of diverse. It's spread across the world. You can see on this map all the locations of the various people. We generally work at home or inside EMC offices, but not directly as part of a co-located team. We're self-organizing, so generally we pick the features that we think are important and we want to work on. We're around 2 to 4 developers normally per team, so Spring Boot has kind of got a core of about 3 on at the moment, and a few half people that float between other projects. And I think we're very small for what we do. And one outcome of being small is that we need help. We can't produce the code that we produce without community involvement. So these are some stats. I had to update it this morning. These are the stats for Spring Boot. So currently we have 186 individual contributors that have given us code that have actually made it into the mainline, and 3,016 people have forked the project to either build it or have a look at it at some point. And if you look at the Spring JIRA, you'll see that there's a similar kind of setup there with we have, what's that, 12,969 issues open with the Spring framework. And these aren't bugs, because we don't write bugs. These are improvements or problems that people have found. It's definitely not bugs.
And bugs.
Features.
And some bugs.
And some bugs.
Yeah.
So the point of all this is really what we need to do is try and make this process of getting involved with our code as painless as possible. We want people to be able to contribute code or raise issues and test changes without it being too onerous for them, because if it's difficult for them, then they're not going to get involved and we're not going to get the benefit. So a little bit about the stack that we use. All the Spring projects are now hosted on GitHub. The issue trackers that we use vary. Historically, we've had JIRA, so some of the older projects use JIRA. Spring Boot and some of the newer projects use GitHub issues. And I personally, I prefer GitHub issues because people tend to use it more. If they have a GitHub account, they're quite likely to just raise an issue with GitHub issues.
Let's start with you don't need to open an account in another server, as you would need to do with JIRA.
Yeah, exactly. JIRA is like another step that you have to do.
Those are small barriers, but they're important for a lot of people.
Yeah. The reason JIRA exists is mainly historical, but also it has some features that GitHub Issues doesn't have, and some of the projects need those, so targeting multiple versions, things like that. And then in terms of actually building, we have Bamboo, which is our continuous integration server, and that's publicly accessible. So if you want to go to build.spring.io, you can see all the jobs that are currently going through.
And we will see an example how it may be useful for you. Why would you want to do that? And
then finally, we have JFrog Artifactory, which is the place where binaries are published. I say internally, but they're not. It's externally available, but it's the place they go when Bamboo's finished. So it's under our control. And then finally, we have Bintray, which is where the finally released bits get pushed and then onto the Maven Central. In terms of builds, we have each project lead can choose the build system they want. There's no like mandate. So when I worked on Spring Framework Core, that used Gradle. Spring Boot uses Maven. I have no particular preference for either. I think they're both. I think the problem with build is it's a difficult thing. So build tools often get the blame, but I think they're both equally as good or bad as each other. So in terms of community involvement, generally the first place that people get involved is to raise issues. Normally, the first time that people really want to actually give back to the community is because they've hit some particular problem that they've identified that they need to tell us about. And you might think that an issue is kind of fairly straightforward, just raise it, someone looks at it and gets fixed. But there's actually quite a lot of management that goes around just with an issue as it comes in. So almost always the first thing that happens when you raise one on GitHub Issues with boot is that we'll likely format your issue. So if you've not learned Markdown when you're raising an issue, I really recommend you try and just look at the basic syntax. It's not very difficult. And it makes a huge difference to how readable the bug can be if code snippets are escaped off, and if you use backticks to highlight keywords. Once we've got an issue in the tracker, we've then got to reproduce it. And we have two different ways of doing that. Sometimes people will give us unit tests, which is great as a pull request. Sometimes people give us nothing, so we have to try and replicate it ourselves. And we also have an issues project, which I think we'll jump to in a minute and have a quick look at. This is a separate repository, and a lot of the Spring projects have this, that is the name of the project -issues, and you can pull that and then create a sample project that shows what problem you're having and submit a pull request to the issues project. And this is a huge bonus for us. So if you've got a problem that you're hitting and you really want us to look at it, giving us that head start of giving us an issues project is more likely to get your issue looked at amongst the sea of things that we've got to do.
From the user point of view of this issues project, I think that this is very, very useful and rewarding tool for providing this kind of feedback or open those bugs. I opened a couple of them and used the issues project. And first of all, it's fun because instead of writing this unit test and then trying, to pack it in a reasonable way, you need to go to the output and clean up and keep only the sources and zip it, and you are not sure which location should you zip it from, etc. Here, it's just, it's a Git project that you create a pull request, and as the opposite of the pull request to the real source, this one probably will be accepted very nicely.
Oh,
so it's first of all, it's fun. And the amount of collaboration and the feedback that you get on the code that you provide is also a big deal, because Spring guys can comment any line on your code directly in your code, ask questions, make comments in the code of the issue that you reproduce.
Yeah.
And it's. I had much better feelings doing that than attaching the unit test as a zip to JIRA.
Yeah, exactly. And also, you don't need to build our project. So Spring Boot takes a good 20 to 30 minutes to build if you did everything with all integration tests, and you just don't need to do that. You can just write a project. So this is the GitHub. So Spring Boot issues, if you want to check it out. And then basically the format is we provide README instructions and a blank template project. And you basically submit a pull request with the bug number that you're wanting us to look at. And then each one of these is just a standard a Spring Boot project. So, we can just take this, check it out, run it. And you can see here, some people prefer Gradle, so they give us Gradle issues. Some use Maven. But it's a massive head start for us because we don't need to, try and recreate the situation that you're experiencing.
And think about your GitHub stats. You contribute to Spring project. Looks good.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. If you want to interrupt us during the presentation, feel free. I prefer that.
Hour and a half. We need you to interrupt. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, so the question was, if we have a pull request, do we expect, basically the kind of etiquette around sending a pull request, where do we expect it? Do we expect it to be rebased and stuff? We have a whole section on that, which we will get to.
It's nice that you're actually already ready to issue a pull request for the code. That's good. Squash all the commits into a single one. Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, the problem with a project like Spring Boot is it's moving fast anyway. So even if you've rebased, the chances are by the time we get to look at it, it's not. It needs rebasing again, rebeasting. Yeah, then we have this concept of labeling and targeting. So this often confuses people. So each project, again, manages things slightly differently. If I go to the Spring Boot project, you'll see we have, in the issues, we have a number of milestones set up. So I kind of treat these as a fairly loose guide. So if it ends up in one of these buckets, that's what we're aiming to try and fix it for. So if you raise an issue and we find it's a bug, then we'll most likely put it in the 126 bucket because we want that in the next stable 126 release, and then it'll get forward ported to the 13x line as well. If you are doing feature requests, then we'll often try and target it towards a particular milestone or something that we think is important, but there's no real strong guarantee that if we run out of time, we won't push that issue around. And then we also have a kind of general backlog milestone, which is things that we think are particularly interesting and we'd really like to get to, but we might not have the time for a specific release. And in addition to that, we have a whole bunch of labels in GitHub that we assign to issues. So you can see things that we recommend, like bugs. We will treat differently from enhancement requests. And the most critical one is kind of a regression. So if we've got a bug and a regression, that tends to be kind of pushed to the front of the queue, and we'll try and address that as much as we can. So, if we did something in version 124, and then in 125, someone says, you broke it, then we take that very, very seriously in the team. We want to keep back compatibility. There are a few other interesting ones here. Occasionally, people use the issue tracker to ask questions, and we try and discourage that as much as possible. So we have a move to Stack Overflow label that's kind of like, please go over there and ask the questions. I don't want to put people off raising issues because it's sometimes quite hard to know when something's a bug, when it's something that's misconfigured. But don't be offended if we try and push you over to Stack Overflow, and a lot of the team do monitor that. I guess.
Wait, go back for a second.
Sure.
This one is also great and important label. So ideal for contribution basically means it's a feature that should be relatively easy to implement for someone who wants to start to contribute to the Spring community. So if you look for your way in and want to do something meaningful and interesting, just look for the features which is labeled with ideal for contribution. It should be relatively easy to start with them. Yeah,
they're an excellent starting point, and they're also, sometimes we get feature requests, and a lot of the time with open source, it's often what you leave out of a project that makes it good as well. You know, if you took everything that came in, things, you know, might not be holistically as good. So ideal for contribution is stuff that we think is a good idea, stuff that's probably not too onerous to get started from, and you know, if you're looking to kind of make a code contribution, this is a good label to follow. Okay, this is JIRA. So it's a lot. I find it a lot more difficult to follow, to be honest. But if we look at the Spring framework,
that's because you're too young. Hipster GitHub stuff.
Yeah, no one ever puts animated GIFs in JIRA. I don't know why. Okay, so Spring Framework has a more ordered approach than Spring Boot. So they have more in the way of backlog targets than we do. They also have this one, which is quite interesting. Waiting for triage means that it's something that's coming in that no one's actually got round to reviewing and seeing if it makes sense yet. So often you'll find when bugs get raised, they get put into this waiting for triage label. Well, they use versions.
And that's the analog of ideal for contribution. The contribution is welcome.
Yeah, contribution is welcome again. Yeah. And pending closure, I guess, is stuff that we're probably not going to get round to do. Yeah, this is the one feature of JIRA that I don't like, because it tells you how many bugs are coming in and how many you fixed.
As long as it's not too fat.
It is always going up.
Yeah, but on the other side, once the difference here is small, it looks impressive.
Oh, right, yeah. And then finally, we might fix your issue, if you're lucky. Okay, yeah, we should talk about how we
yeah, so here we're talking about Bamboo. And so once the issue been fixed, I think we should just go to Bamboo. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Where is it?
Oh, just on there.
Yeah, okay. So as Phil mentioned, once the bug is fixed, there is continuous integration kicking in, and Bamboo that monitors GitHub will start building the project that fix was submitted to. And sometimes it's interesting for you to test the fix before the release and see that actually what you found was fixed. And usually you will just go and download the latest snapshot. Right. And the location of the latest snapshots is on the homepage and spring.io in the project. So maybe we should show that as well. Yep. If people don't know how to download the snapshots.
If people don't know how the internet works, this is.
Yep.
So if you pick a project, what we'll see here is there's a whole bunch of versions that are the current version and the latest snapshots. So
if your issue has been just fixed, it probably will be in the snapshot.
Right.
So just switch it here. And you will get a snippet for your build tool that you can copy paste from here. And you can switch the build tool here on top. It was between Maven and Gradle. And then you have this URL of the repository. And repo.spring.io, that's the repository of Spring where the artifacts are until they are released. So you won't get the release from here, but you definitely will get all the snapshots and the milestones. So this is the repository, and you can browse the tree, of course, and see here libs release local. That's the repository for all the snapshots, and it will be what IO, right? IO Spring.
It's probably org. Spring frame. Yeah, we never changed the package, unfortunately. We've got a new domain, but we didn't want to break everyone. Spring framework.
Spring framework, boot. Spring framework. Here is it, right? Boot, and you will see all the modules here. So here we go. What should we?
Pick the top one, maybe.
Yeah, top one. And you can see here all the versions and all the snapshots, and you can, that's the latest one too, and you see here a bunch of files. One of them is the latest snapshot. So you don't care much about that because they are not very, very useful because of those timestamps. And generally, when we are talking about multi-module project like Spring Boot, specific files not usually makes much sense. What is important is a build. So a build of a project is a higher level of abstraction on top of artifacts because the artifacts are, you need to find the correlating snapshots, which is not very pleasant thing to do. And the build, as we mentioned, starts in Bumble. So this is, here you can see the runs of the Spring project. You can see here that it's continuously running with the build numbers. Some of them fail, most of them pass, and that's a good thing. And for each and every past build, which will happen after your bugs have been fixed, you can go into the build itself and try to see what changed. So first of all, you can check that your commit is in, right? So you can see here that one of the issues was resolved in this build. And now you want to get to the artifacts that were created by this build, and for that you need to get to the repository. Bamboo has the integration with the repository built-in. It's hidden here in this tab for some reason, and here you can see the Artifactory link that will take you to the build browser. So now you are in the same repository. Wow, the Wi-Fi is slow.
Well, that's slow.
Yeah, that's...
Turn off your phones.
Looks like it.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, looks like it died.
It's going to make the release interesting.
Yeah, it will.
1.3 is not going to happen for maybe at least another couple of weeks. I should imagine we'll be at RC1 fairly soon.
Yeah, it's all dead, basically. Okay, so let's go back to the slides, and then we'll try it again.
Yeah,
after it will be back, hopefully.
That's not good. Let's just see if this one's died as well. Oh, that's just us.
Oh, okay. And Bamboo, what's up?
Yeah,
just Artifactory. Perfect timing. All right. Okay. Yeah. So we'll get back to that.
Yeah.
And and from then you can get the exact artifact that contained the fix to your issue.
And you have integration with other CI tools, don't you, as well, like Jenkins
yeah,
and things. And
of course. Okay. So yeah. All right.
all right.
Let's go back to that.
If you don't want to get started by helping us with code, then we very much welcome documentation fixes, especially as none of us in the actual team can actually write. So if you find grammar mistakes, which a lot of people seem to really enjoy doing, please do try and fix them. The documentation for the Spring framework, if you go back maybe 3 years, was incredible because it was all written in DocBook, which is all XML, and nobody ever helped us with the documentation when it was in XML. But with the recent advances, we have documentation now published for Spring Boot and for the Spring Framework in HTML, PDF, and EPUB formats. And what's lovely about it is, if you go and actually look at the source for the documentation, it's written in ASCII doc, and specifically ASCII Doctor, which is without doubt the best documentation tool you can find, and you should use it, even internally, and drop Word, go to ASCII doc, it's great. But if you look at the actual code on the repository, or if you check out the Git repo, you can see that the documentation is perfectly readable in a text editor. And it's actually such an easy kind of format that just by looking at what's there, it's pretty easy to follow and pick up. If you use Markdown, there's a few differences, but generally, if you're just trying to fix code, grammar mistakes or add a chapter, it's really easy to use. Here's what it looks like when it's rendered as HTML. And this is actually what it looks like when it's rendered as HTML on GitHub. So if our internet is working, I can show you this. So let's have a look at getting started. So you can see actually when you look at this code on GitHub, it's actually perfectly readable.
It's almost perfect. GitHub does a decent job in rendering ASCII doc, not 100%.
No, not 100%. And there are some security issues that mean that some of the features that we use when we generate the actual documentation don't render quite right. But and you can see here's the raw form of that. So it's really easy to kind of make changes and work with that documentation. So the question is, what do we use to write ASCII Doctor? And the answer is, I personally use Eclipse. So I'm not going to apologize. I use Eclipse. I like Eclipse. I've learned the key presses.
Maven, Eclipse, you got the idea.
I'm a certain age, set in stone. I'm quite happy with it. So I tend to just work on it in there, and don't leave my IDE. I really don't know what the other team members use. That's one of the beauties of it.
There are tons of ways to write ASCII doc because it's a simple textual format. So almost any of the modern text editors for Mac have ASCII doc plugins or support with previews, Atom, Wrangler, or what's not. There is a Chrome extension that actually allows you to see rendered ASCII doc as you write ASCII doc.
That's exactly what I do. So I have like 2 monitors, and I have Chrome here with the extension switched on, and then I edit in the IDE. And whenever I save, Chrome just updates, and I get like an instant. And
of course, there is plugin for IntelliJ as well.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think there's a plugin for Eclipse, but I don't use that. The syntax is so easy that just a text editor is fine. Are there any other questions while we're?
And you can edit it on GitHub and switch to preview to see the difference. That will work as well.
Yeah, I think you can even do a pull request straight in GitHub with it. It's really
of course. Nice. And then you can see the preview and do a pull request from there. So if you're going to fix a typo, you don't need to install Chrome plugins for that.
Once we've got the documentation, so we've got those ASCII Doctor files, and they actually get built by our continuous integration process. And there's an ASCII Doctor plugin for Maven. There's one for Gradle as well. And that will spit out the PDF, the HTML, and the EPUB formats. And then we create a zip file, and that zip file gets uploaded to the Artifactory browser. So I don't know if you want to explain a little bit about the properties that we use.
Yeah, so let's see if we can do that. Okay.
We're still down, aren't we?
Okay, so what you see here is, I'll show you in the screenshot, is a bunch of properties for each and every file, and binary repository is opposite of just a shared file system. The real difference is the metadata that you can annotate your files. And this is a perfect example of real-life metadata which is used for the purpose of determining which files are documentation archives, because there are a bunch of archives, the jars, the Java docs, and what's not, and there are also jar files which are documentation. And this Perl script need to find those files only to then copy them to the Apache HTTP server. And what you see here is a bunch of properties file. Part of them are generated by the Bamboo plugin, stuff like the build name, the build number, etc., and the revision of Git that it was created from. But there are also custom metadata like the zip type. And the zip type is set to docs. This information is searchable. So what this script does, it asks for all the files which have the zip type set to docs, and the creation date is later than the last time it actually ran, since it runs periodically by the current expression.
Actually, it uses there's a second property that it uses. It's a bit more
deployed true or false. Yeah,
that's so it actually updates the properties.
Right.
So it's you can use it as a flag as well. It's quite a nice.
Yeah, or just system. Get it by last the created date.
Yeah,
that will work as well. And so the question is how those properties now are set. And a bunch of them are set automatically by the build server, by Bamboo Atzmo. But the custom ones can be set in various ways. So first of all, we can issue a REST API, a REST request. So we can deploy the files and then in additional request annotate them with metadata. And it's doable by Maven, although quite painful. Mm-hmm. We need to run some kind of plugin to execute the REST API in the end of the build, and that's not very friendly. The other option is to include what is called matrix params. And this is a standard HTTP trick, which is documented in the spec. In any place in the URL, you can add any number of pairs, semicolon, name value, semicolon, name value, and those pairs can come in any place in the URL. After HTTP, after www, before .com, after .com, in any place. It won't affect the resolution of the URI, but the server will be able to read them and do whatever they like with them. So for example, if I would like to annotate all my files that come from a particular build with a set of metadata, with the pair of name and value, I could put some pair of name and value inside the URL of the repository that I deploy to. Let's say after /artifactory or after the slash of the repository. But here, what needed to be done is annotating only those which are generated from this build from this plugin. The one that deploy only these files. So what was done here is abusing the file type, the extension. Right, so all this is actually an extension of the file. And from Maven perspective, Maven just takes it and spills it in the end of the file, generating perfect .zip artifacts, but also the matrix params. They will be stripped eventually by the HTTP protocol itself, by the browser. The file will be .zip and that's all, but the server, we will get those parameters and we'll know what to do with them, namely annotate all the files. And then, of course, they become searchable, and the Quan script can parse them and process them.
Yeah, it's a great little technique that it's a lot easier than trying to do REST calls from Maven.
Okay.
Oh no! So the question was this Quan script, is it a feature of JFrog? No, this is something that one of the it's been there forever since I joined the team. Someone hacked it up. JFrog offers like a quite nice way of doing these kind of calls. I think it just uses REST calls to actually do its work.
Yes, the search of the REST APIs, what is used in this Perl script is calling REST API to Artifactory to find them.
Yeah.
But the script is written in Perl. It definitely not from JFrog.
Yeah. Every company that I know has got one of these magic things that someone wrote 10 years ago that is on some machine under someone's desk somewhere that people just don't touch, and this is ours. So I actually have no idea quite what it does, how it works. All I know is that if I manage to put something in Artifactory with those tags, at some point this script runs as a cron job somewhere on some server, and a zip file gets unpacked into some directory location that happens to be served on docs.spring.
Maybe it's not Perl.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it is.
Yeah, we have no idea what the script is and where it is. It just works.
Maybe it's basic.
Maybe there's a little drop that just take the file and put them in the server or something.
I can show you the directory structure that might make it a bit more obvious what's going on. Let's have a look at there. So you can actually, this actually can be quite useful if you're trying to find a particular documentation for a particular version, because we still seem to have a lot of trouble persuading Google that version 2.5 is not the latest one of Spring. So often if you search Google, you'll find it points you to an old reference manual.
Yeah, 2.5.1. That's the best SEO ever. Whatever you search for Spring in Google, you will find documentation of 2.5.1.
I think
I have a question about that. Can you update those historical documents like a band that says, go give the latest version?
That's a good idea.
There has been plenty of internal discussion about this, about how we do it. And there's actually some meta tags that apparently we can add that persuade Google that this is not the greatest.
On the Postgres documentation, you go to a particular, you'll have a version that has all the Google JC point, whatever, and you'll get there, but you'll have a row across the top saying version 8.5, 9.1.
We need to find whoever wrote that Perl script and get them back to finish the job. You can see here as well. This is the structure. So we have the stable ones won't change, but we actually release because those snapshots end up in Artifactory. We have snapshot documentation as well. So if you ever want to see the state of the current build documentation, you can, and that's very helpful for us as well. Even though ASCII Doctor renders nicely, it's sometimes helpful to look at the generated output.
Yeah, that's another thing about, especially for snapshot documentation. So I would say that, so Artifactory is mainly a tool for developers, both in Spring and for you as developers to get this information or those artifacts from Spring, but it's not a release platform. Right, so, and if the documentation is intended for the public audience, it will probably be hit badly. Hopefully the project will be successful and people will start requesting this documentation a lot. But for a less popular versions of documentation, for example, the documentation for each and every snapshot, you can actually access it directly from the artifacts that we just spoke about, the zip files. And that's a feature of Artifactory that you can dive into a zip file, and here probably you won't see it. So, okay. So what you can see here, and that's exactly what we saw earlier. Let's find. It was, what's the name?
Docs, I think. I don't know
that's the value, right?
Docs zip.type, wasn't it? Yeah.
Zip.
Zip.type.
Yeah, the zip.type, right? This is what it was. So let's find one of them. I clicked it. Okay. Search. No search.
Maybe it wasn't that.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't that.
I can't remember.
Yeah, okay, but okay. It's too small here. So it's better from show to here. So what you see here in the URL is that's the URL to the zip file, which has this property of zip of doc. And then we have exclamation mark and diving into the file. And that will actually render the file in the browser, and you will be able to see the file itself. And of course, all the links will be clickable, and you will actually navigate the contents of the zip file, right? So it's there, it's working, so you can use that.
One of the things it's really helpful for is looking inside jar manifests to see which version of Oracle was built, which version of Java was used to build a particular jar. So we use it as part of the manual release process. We'll just double check that we're building Spring Boot with the right version of Java, and that will end up in the manifest. So
and you can navigate the Java docs as well, because they are essentially the same HTML files.
Yeah.
So that works as well. So we have two options for getting those docs: relying on the Perl script, or just looking inside the zip file.
The zip file is hosted on Artifactory, and using that URL pattern, it looks right inside of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Correct.
Out of the box, that's not anything.
Yeah, so the question was that looking inside a zip file, did we have to customize Artifactory to do that? And the answer is no, that's just a standard feature of Artifactory.
It's disabled by default in the settings of the repository because of the security features. Think about people from the outside of your organization put files inside your repository and then execute code inside those files. That's a pretty nasty thing. But since your repository is trusted, and the only files that get there is files from your Bamboo server, you actually can trust this content. You enable this feature, and it's a nice one.
Any other questions on docs before? All right. So the next thing I want to talk about a little bit is contributing code. So the issues is nice. It's nice to have people use our stuff and tell us what's not working. Contributing code is even nicer. So we will try and make the process of contributing code as painless as possible. So both the Spring Boot project and the Spring Framework try to give you a single-click install for common IDEs. So with Spring Boot, you can just check it out and do Maven clean install, and it will build the entire project and run all the tests. And with Spring Framework, you can just do a /gradle w build, and it will do the same thing. And this is actually one of the interesting things about Spring Boot is it's got its own Maven plugin, and the integration tests use that Maven plugin. So we actually have to do quite a bit of extra work to make this process of being able to run Maven clean install just work for you when you check it out. But it's definitely a benefit that we see. People expect that to work and not have to do profiles or anything special. Also, both projects include quite detailed contributing instructions. And I think this is a really useful thing, even when inside your own organizations, giving instructions on how to build the project, get started, what database you need, etc., is very beneficial. And then two other things that we try and do is minimize formatting pain. So if you're using Eclipse, we'll try and help you out. And recently we've added Checkstyle verification. So a little bit about automatic formatting versus manual formatting. So Spring Framework is manually formatted. So the team over the years have crafted perfectly formatted code, and it's manually done. Spring Boot is auto-formatted. When you save a file inside Eclipse, which most of the team still use Eclipse, so if you save a file, the whole file gets formatted according to the rules that we've got set up. Either way, both of these projects have got some Eclipse project-specific configuration, so that if you do hit Control-Shift-F to format your code in the Spring Framework, you still get some kind of help. It gets you some of the way there. If you want to do auto configuration with Maven, it's a bit interesting. There's a There's two ways that you can work with Maven and Eclipse. The first is to use the Maven Eclipse plugin inside Maven, and then you run that, that command from Maven, and it will generate a .project file that you can import into Eclipse. And these days, most people, I think, just import with M2E, which comes as part of Eclipse. So if you're using M2E and you want to just do like import the project, a Maven project, then there's a URL for a plugin that I wrote quite a while ago that basically tries to respect these settings from your configuration for the non-Eclipse version and apply them to a project. If you're doing it with Gradle, things are a lot easier because you can just kind of write code inside the script. This is a snippet from an IDE include that's on Spring Framework that just shows it copies a couple of files.
And that's again, so Gradle is the same. There are two ways to work with it. So this one generates Eclipse project files.
Yeah.
And the other way is to import.
It. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. To be honest, because I haven't touched Gradle for a little while, I don't know what happens when you import that into Eclipse. Yep. But I can show you a quick demo of the Maven version for anyone that is using Eclipse. Actually, who is using Eclipse out of interest, or is everyone? Okay, so fair few. And the rest, I assume, are IntelliJ. Anyone NetBeans? Anyone Vi? Any Emacs? No? Good. So what I've got here is, this is Spring Boot imported out of the box into my IDE. And if you look at any projects in Eclipse, you can have specific formatting settings. And if you have enable project-specific settings, this gives you a way of applying formatting rules to a project that's imported without having to have people kind of set up Eclipse themselves. So if you import this and you've got that plugin installed, what you'll get is a whole bunch of help. So if I create a new class, you can already see, let me make that font a bit bigger.
Zoom doesn't work in Eclipse? I'm just running now.
Probably need a plugin for it. So you can already see you get some help, like the Apache header that we have on every file is automatically included, and if I then start to do some code, right, thing. So that's my code working. I may think that's great formatting if that's my company standard, but if I save that file, we get the cleanup actions and the formatting applied in Eclipse. So you can see it adds the braces where we want them. We prefix everything, every private member access with this, et cetera, et cetera. Something else that we've added recently, and I'm keen to get some feedback on it, is Checkstyle. So Checkstyle is a really old project. It's on SourceForge, and if you configure a Maven plugin or a Gradle plugin, and then you give it an XML file that has a whole bunch of rules. So I've tried to put a bunch of rules into Spring Boot to check things like this prefix is applied and the header is correct. What my hope is that people use it and we get pull requests that contain better formatted code. But if you're finding you're using it and you don't like it and you actually give up on submitting a request, please let me know, because I'd rather take out Checkstyle and get the pull request and we'll format it for you than have you put off. But if you're inside your own organization, I think it's a very worthwhile thing to have a look at Checkstyle. I was astounded at how many issues it actually found inside the Spring Boot code, because we're kind of precise about the formatting. So I want to talk a little bit about Git. So who uses Git? Anyone on Subversion? Okay. Anyone on something else, Perforce or something?
CVS, clear case.
CVS? Is there a CVS?
CVS.
Okay, cool. So even if you're using Subversion, I think there's a bridge that you can use to give you a local Git to kind of work on your code. And I'm really a big fan of Git because it gives you the power to refactor your commits. So if you send us a pull request, both internally and externally, we use pull requests. So we will, if a change is kind of non-controversial or it's a fix to a bug, it just goes straight in. If we're adding something that's kind of a major feature, or we want some back and forth between the team, we'll often use a pull request ourselves just to give us all the benefit of GitHub's kind of iterative development. We'll almost never just merge your code. We almost always will do something to it. So please don't be offended if we do. We'll always refactor code. We may add tests. We may add our kind of particular style of formatting. One of the things that we often do is fix Git commit messages. So Git commit messages, I think, are one of the most underrated debugging tools out there. And the problem with them is that you don't really realize the benefit of them until you've gone 6 months down the line of your project and you're trying to work out why a particular line changed.
So who used cleanup as a commit message? Don't do that anymore.
Fix thing. So if you're in Eclipse, I'll show you this. If I pick a file, I'm sure most of you know there's a feature like this in virtually every IDE. In Eclipse, it's show annotations. You can do it on the command line as well. But you basically get a view of every specific line and which particular commit went in and what changed and why it changed. And so often when you're finding you're debugging an issue, you'll reach a particular point and you'll then go back and do a git blame because you realize that something changed and you're not sure why that changed. So for us, what we try to do is keep a consistency in our logs. And we also try and tell a story. So for us, commit messages, first line is capitalized. It's short, no more than 50 characters. Second line is blank. Then we have 72 character wrapping, manually wrapped. We always say fix bug or do thing. We never say fixed or fixing. And then the last thing we do is refer to a GitHub or a JIRA issue number so that we can kind of trace the story back. So why would you want to, why go to that extra effort? Well, the Git logs are easier to read in the terminal if you've manually wrapped them. If you look at them in the IDE, they're easy to read. And I think one of the most important things is they look good on GitHub. So I don't know if you've seen many open source projects. If you go and look through the logs on GitHub, it starts with a bug number, and then it's some preamble, and you've got to click ... to actually see what, what's this thing about. So by having a short 50 characters at the front, it's kind of concise, and you can see quickly just what's happened. Another benefit, I think, is if you're unable to describe what you've done in 50 characters, then there's a good chance that it might be better as split up into a number of commits. So it's often a good sign that if you're unable to craft a good commit message, maybe you need to refactor and your commits into more than one.
And that's back to the question about squashing commits. I think you will agree with me here, Phil, that the more commits, the merrier, because they contain the information, and if the messages are good enough, you get more metadata about your code. And ideally, you want to see every expression why it was changed in your code, and if I exaggerate, but if any of those will be separate commits, you can see the full story, how your code changed.
Exactly.
Squashing commits to, I made a good progress here, it's not really useful.
Exactly. This is one of the things we'll maybe do a little bit of a demo later. One of the huge benefits of Git is it gives you the ability to kind of do that thing after the fact. So I don't know how many of you are into kind of cleaning up code as you go, but more often than not, I'm trying to add a feature, and I'm in a bit of code, and I and I see something that's kind of like, ooh, I want to fix that, but it's not really related to what I'm doing. So Git's great because you can work on a branch, you can do git add, git commit, I'm starting my thing, and then git add again, do the cleanup, and then continue, and then when you're done, you can rework things. So I'll show you that in a bit. Here's just to show how hard it is, here's an example, a screenshot from Spring Boot, and you can see here we've actually managed to break our own rules in one of the commit messages, with it going over 50. But on the whole, that's a very readable and approachable commit log. So maybe I'll just show you this, because this is one of the best features, I think, of Git. So we've added this dummy class. How many for time?
Half an hour.
So what I often do with Git is just, branches are really cheap, so I'll often just work on a branch to do something, and then my workflow tends to be very much messy when I'm working. So I often will just do a git commit with a -m, added thing, and then or if this was something that maybe I should have cleaned up, so then I'll git add dot git commit -m. So this is the way I tend to work, is very kind of iterative, and I tend to commit often and with kind of enough information for myself just so that I know what's going on. So let's just do one more. So if I look at my log, I've got the nice commit messages further down, and then my hideous ones that really need to be worked on. So who knows about Git rebase interactive mode? Okay, so about maybe half. So Git rebase -I will give you a little editor view that shows you the things that have changed since a particular point in time. So I often do Git rebase -I and then tell it to tell me what's changed since the branch that I took it from. So in this case, because I created a new branch of master, so you can imagine it's kind of split off, I'm saying, tell me everything, give me an interactive rebase against master. So if I do that, what you'll see is those commits that I've done. So I may find that what I really want to do is, maybe this is an existing class and I want to do my work up here, and this one's like useful, and these two are kind of really related. It gives you this little information about the commands that you can use. So what this is basically saying is, this is the commit shard, this is a brief outline of the message, and this is the thing you want to do. And I've already there just re-switched a couple of commits. So if I save that, it will rebase, and then if I do git log, you'll see that now the fixed tag is the top thing. So my workflow, I often do git rebase over and over again until I'm happy with things. So I maybe reorder, and then I want to make these two things one commit. So I'll do squash. It gives me a message, and then I tend to just ignore that. And so now I have like two things together and the tag that I want to fix. And then normally my final step is to craft a good commit message when I know what's in each individual thing. So I'll then do rework for working the commit message. One other nice little feature of Git that you can have is you can have a settings file. So I have a template. So if I do a new commit message and I'm not rebasing, I get a template that looks like this that gives me some clues, and these just get stripped out. So now I can write something, this is a very good commit. blah, 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 blah. And like manually wrap it. And then the final stage is the issue that it fixed.
This is a good comment.
This one would just be like a polish commit. Just, it's not that relevant. I just tend to use the word polish. And you can also do, if you stop for editing, you can do some neat things like move back one commit and then do git add -p and like pick particular lines that you want to kind of merge as well. Yeah, well worth reading up about that if you haven't already. All right, so release pipeline.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit. Maybe you want to take this for the Bamboo and Artifactory thing.
Okay, yeah, so let's talk a little bit about release, and up until now we only mentioned how we build snapshots, right? So that was pretty easy. There is no actual pipeline for the snapshot. Bamboo detects the change in GitHub, builds the jar files and the doc files and everything, upload them all to Artifactory, done. This is where it ends. Occasionally and frequently enough, Spring team decides that it's time for the release, and then what is being built is what is called the release candidate, right? Release candidate, it's a new build that might have other Maven or Gradle commands because it might involve other procedures than the simple snapshot build, and it also has a release version into it. It's not a snapshot anymore. So this is something that is done in Bamboo, and this is usually a manual process because this is something that deliberately issued by a release engineer. That's not the only process that can be done. You can work with snapshots that getting released continuously, and every snapshot is actually a release, and then the process of converting snapshot to release should be automated and this kind of stuff. But in case of Spring, the engineers go to Bamboo and craft this release candidate. So first of all, the version should be selected from the release value, and Bamboo plugin can automatically suggest the next iteration value, the next snapshot value, and all those bits of branching and tagging are taken care of automatically as well. Who is familiar with Maven release plugin? Okay, so this is like Maven release plugin, but it works.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Don't jinx it. We're about to click the
yeah,
button.
okay, yeah, that's usually works.
If the Wi-Fi is good, it works.
All right. Oh no, that's auto-generated from the previous value. The versioning scheme of Spring confuses the plugin. If they were used just 1.2.6-snapshot, it will be automatically corrected to 1.2, guess to 1.2.
Yeah, we have a kind of crazy numbering scheme because for OSGI OSGI reasons, if you notice that we have like build snapshot instead of dash snapshot, that's so that when you sort things alphabetically, they make sense. That's why we have B for build snapshot, then M, then RC, and then release. But yeah, that was a typo on my part.
And that confuses. So generally, you shouldn't type anything here.
No.
Everything should be pre-populated. But that's if you use like a classic Maven snapshots and releases versions. You can teach this thing to understand whatever your versioning thing is, or just type it manually, like Phil just did. Okay. So and the most important pieces are here. We select the repository under which we will stage the artifacts, and it will be lib staging local naturally, and the staging comment, which is also important. And so the release pipeline is a little bit like a history of commits. It's about artifacts that go through repository to repository and through stage to stage until they have a release status. And those commits can help understand why a certain artifact went to the next stage in the release pipeline, so they are useful as well. Right, exactly. Or the Maven POM files.
Yeah, correct.
Yes. So this is what it does. For POM files, how it works. Once you configured it, it runs a build, whatever build you use, whether it's Maven or Gradle. First thing, before a build even kicks in, it changes the version from the snapshot to release. No Git job done yet. The job starts, the build starts, and after a successful build, the release properties file or POM XMLs are actually committed to the branch, and tag is created with them. And then the changes are changed again to the next snapshot version, and those are committed back to the master. And for the next, and that triggers CI build because we just had a commit, right? So it builds the first next snapshot immediately.
Yeah, so you can see this is a step that I've already taken because that build process takes a while, but you can see the tag has been created in the Git repo. If you look at the commit history, you will see that I did a bunch of stuff, and then the Spring build master, which is that triggered the user that plugin actually has commit rights to, is the one that actually did that release version.
And this comment, the release version, it's exactly what we just saw in this form in Bamboo.
Exactly.
Okay.
Should we try and?
Yeah. So we can show again the artifacts. They are in the staging repository. Let's not cheat here. So you can click on the link. Here. Yep. Should go.
I hope it's up again.
It happens again. I think that was what's stuck it. That's interesting. What's going on? Yeah. Builds. Well, let's go through the builds browser, and then here we have a lot of builds. Yeah. Okay. That's the guy. It's probably not the latest one. Here's the guy. Okay, so you can see the stage of the commit here. That was the build that Phil ran this morning. And inside this build, you can see, of course, the modules, the artifacts, and their release. This is the change that the plugin does. And those artifacts are in the libs staging.
Yeah, it works best in a less
crazy
font.
Not in presentation mode, right?
Lib
Here we go.
local, yeah.
Okay, in lib stage local. This is after the staging build. And the next steps, of course, so let's go back to the build.
It's over here, isn't it?
Can we get it from here?
Okay.
There's another piece I want to show. So here we can go back to the build, and the release history is recorded with the artifacts as well. Did I click it? Probably didn't. No?
Maybe it's further down.
No, I'm not logged in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I don't have
You want to log in?
I don't know my password.
You don't have to. Okay.
Yeah.
So generally you can see here you saw that it's staged, and here you can see the release history with the little details like the comment and everything. But you need to be logged in to see that. Another thing that from here, from the general build info, you can go back to Bamboo by link, or you can just go to the previous tab.
Yeah,
that will do the same.
I tend to like. Artifactory tends to just work for me, so I often don't have a login and I don't really worry about it. I occasionally have to go and look if it's in the right place, but it's pretty it's pretty good.
Okay, so and here you can see two types of releases that Bamboo is possibly do: the normal and the promote to Bintray and Central. Normal what it's called here is release inside Artifactory. So what it will basically do, it will take the release artifacts from the staging repository and will just move them to a release repository, adding a comment in the release history. But of course, more interesting part is the promote to Bintray Central, which on top of this process of releasing inside Artifactory will release the artifacts to two distribution platforms, to Bintray and from there to Maven Central. Right, so it uploads the file to Bintray and tags them on the way, signs the artifacts with the GPG signatures and triggers a Maven Central upload and release from Bintray.
So we will, if you're working on a milestone or an RC1, we will do a release, but not promote to Bintray. But for this one, because it's a maintenance release, we will do a promotion to Bintray. And we also have the option to roll back. So
yeah, so rollback will just move those artifacts in Artifactory in some rolled back, like dark
we have,
repo that no one should get access to. Yes?
that's where we ended up. So we'll...
we had a question.
So the question was, does the plugin automatically roll back the version in Git? And I believe that's a manual process.
Yeah, it's if the staging build fails, it will roll back all the changes, like the branches and the tags will get deleted and everything. But if the artifact is already released or staged, then no changes will be done except of moving it to another repository and adding a trace in the release history.
Yeah, and what we'll often do is, in the same way as we ask you to test the snapshot releases, we will test the staged releases internally. So we will often do things like the Spring.io website is actually an open source project that uses boot. So I often build that with boot to make sure I haven't, broken anything in a real app. I will run a few samples that I've got just to sanity check things. So if it fails, it depends. So like normally I will clean up the git tag, delete it, and I'll often do a force. If I know that I've got to the point where something's gone really bad and no one else has got any commits in, and normally we're working on Slack so we can just sort of talk to each other, I'll often do a force push to get the thing back to the way it was and then fix whatever kind of blocking issue prevented me. This is kind of rare. Normally, especially when we're at like a fairly late in the iteration, it's kind of unusual to find that we've promoted something that fails.
How do you decide when it's time to make a release?
I'm going to make a release right now because this might take a while while I answer that question. So the question was, how do we decide when it's time to make a release? And it's very much driven by the leads and how they feel. So often in like the early start of a project, we'll try and do, if there's critical bugs, that triggers a release. And then often we'll move to a kind of monthly cycle. So, whatever Spring Framework's going out, we'll try and aim for, get a bunch of fixes in and release every month. And then often, certainly with boot, after it's been out a while, we'll just let it tick along. If people have found issues that they can't work around, then that's often, a good trigger for a release. But, a lot of the time people find problems and we're able to offer them, some solution that will work for them while we get the real fix in. So we can't release, with every bug fix because it would, it'd just be impossible.
And the snapshots are completely operational, right? So if there is a bug which is critical for you only, or you've been waiting for some version and it's out, you can definitely leave snapshots until the next release.
Yeah, especially on the 1.2x line, with boot, we're actively developing 1.3, so there's not really a guarantee that if you're using the snapshots, things won't get a bit hairy for you. But with 1.2x, what's going in is stable fixes. So if you are on a 1.2x snapshot and you suddenly find it stops working, then that's probably something that we didn't mean to introduce, and we're very grateful for the fact you're trying it anyway.
Okay, so while it's running, maybe I will explain a little bit of how this works and how it
I'm going to Bintray.
should or will work. Yeah, so this is Bintray. Bintray is a distribution platform. Hopefully you all know about it by now. It hosts repositories. One of them is JCenter, which is the biggest Java, open source Java components repository in the world. And of course, Spring distributed on Bintray and participates in this JCenter repository. The idea in Bintray is that you can include your repositories to a bigger, more popular repositories, but still be the owner of your own thing, right? So here, for example, Phil is a part of Spring organization, and those guys have only one repository, which is JAR's. And JAR's repository of Spring contains all the projects. And what we can see here, by the way, is the files that are being uploaded from Artifactory are already in Bintray. So we already uploaded 194 files. They are not public yet because the process wasn't completed, but they're starting to get together. And you can see here all the projects, and here is a boot. Where is boot? Here is boot, and you can see the milestones of 1.3, and you can see the newly created 1.2.6 release. That's the version already created. It's not fully populated with all the files. You can see the number is counting because files are being uploaded as we speak, but it's already here. The latest version that can be tweeted and announced, it's still this one because this one is not published yet. And you can see here the ability of watching the project, and this is kind of a nice feature for you as a users because you will get notifications on new versions. So if you want to know when new version is out, you can just watch and be notified. I will get an email soon about our new shiny release. And this is the linkage. So this means that this package also exists in JCenter. And I will click here. I will get to JCenter repository now, and it will find everything which also, of course, started with boot and have org Spring Framework boot in its name. It's a long list, but of course, first will be the official canonical repository. Getting back to it, you see here, okay, we have good progress. You can dive in and see the files, of course, per version. And that's for a public version everybody can do. And here are the files. And this is a normal Maven Gradle layout. You can dive in and see the files as well. Statistics are nice. This version won't have any statistics. No one ever downloaded it. But if I will get back to the project itself and go to the statistics, I will see the exact statistic, how they've been downloaded from Bintray with breakdown by version, by country. Let's see where boot is popular. So not surprisingly, it's been the most popular in the States. And yeah, you have some problems in Africa with penetration of Spring Boot. Greenland is not looking good.
Maybe they're using Maven Central still.
Yeah, okay. So let's talk about Maven Central a little bit as well. So Maven Central is another distribution platform which is extremely important channel for now for people who use Maven specifically, because Maven Central is baked into Maven and changing it takes an effort. So by default, Maven is going to Maven Central. And that means that if we want Spring to be really popular, we need to be on Maven Central as well. Bintray allows sync or upload to other distribution platforms, legacy distribution platforms, and we can go to the Maven Central, enter the credentials of OSS Sonatype.org, and by clicking this button, just release all the artifacts to Maven Central as well. It's also, of course, available through REST, and that's exactly what the Bamboo plugin is trying to do now. So after all the files will be successfully uploaded, let's see how it works. Well, it's completed, by the way.
Hey.
And now this is the latest version. And Maven Central status is, well, it's by rest, so it won't show you any status here, but it's successful.
Cool.
And we can actually check it in Maven Central. So it will take a couple of hours from OSS sonatype.org to get to Maven Central, because they probably also use some kind of a Perl script or something. But we can go to their repository. It's called content, if I remember correctly. Repositories, and there is public, if I'm not in error. And here we can go to org. So this is, you know, this is a pile of files from everybody. So we need to find the correct ones. Spring framework. And Spring Boot, whatever, right? Doesn't matter. And here we have our new shiny release dated off now, right? All those files that we just uploaded. And they are on their way. Eventually, they will hit Maven Central. The good news, you don't have to wait, of course, because it's all available in, I went from the same one? No. Where's Bintray? Here. They are available on Bintray, and if you want to use them from here, of course you can. So if you want to configure your tools to work with Bintray, here is a Set Me Up button. It will generate the files that you need to configure a Maven, and for Gradle, it's even easier. You just add JCenter to your repositories, and you're done. And if you need this particular file, on the files themselves, you can find the correct Maven or Gradle snippets that you actually want. Here is our latest 1.6. What happened?
I don't know. We'll go.
Okay, and then you can take the files. Oh, we're out of time.
Yeah.
And so release. Let's tweet about it.
I think so. Let's.
Yeah. So you forgot to tweet about it.
Oh.
Yeah, that's important.
No, because it's not in Central yet.
Who cares? It's in Bintray.
All right, go for it.
Right? Okay. And then you can tweet about your release as well. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so there we go.
Yeah, it was demo.
Release process that we've gone through. The final thing we do is update spring.io. So I just wanted to plug that that's open source. So if you want to look at our website code, you can. When we update it, will update the start website that we have as well. And just as a kind of very brief summary, I think there's a lot of techniques, not just from Spring, but many open source projects that are worth looking at and trying to steal in your own organization. Definitely reducing the getting started pain, using the Git branch techniques and local Artifactory, and having these kind of stage and rollback strategies is well worth doing and well worth investing in. I think with that, we're probably out of time, but we'll hang around afterwards if anyone wants to ask us any specific questions. So, thank you.